Jake had always been the dependable one in the family. For years, he had sacrificed his time and energy to make sure his parents were comfortable. Mortgage payments, bills, house repairs, he did it all. In contrast, his younger brother, Eric, did nothing. No job, no responsibilities, just lounging around, waiting for life to hand him everything. Despite this, their parents seemed perfectly fine with the arrangement. Jake often wondered if he had been taken for granted, but it wasn't until the day he discovered his parents' will that his suspicions were confirmed. It started like any other day. Jake was at his parents' house, helping his father with some paperwork. As usual, his parents were technologically challenged, and Jake often found himself handling things they should have known how to do. That day, it was scanning documents, nothing out of the ordinary. But as he sifted through the pack, one folder caught his eye: estate plan and last will and testament. Normally, Jake respected their privacy, but something about this moment felt different. It wasn't just curiosity, it was the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. He opened the folder and started scanning through the contents. His eyes landed on the names and the distribution of assets. His stomach dropped. Everything was going Eric. The house, their savings, all the assets. Jake's name was mentioned only briefly. In a vague line about loving both sons equally, he felt a tightness in his chest, his heart pounding as his anger rose. It wasn't just the will, it was the realization of what had been happening all these years. He had been the one taking care of everything. And Eric, the lazy, entitled son, was going to inherit it all? He couldn't believe it. All those years of being the reliable one, the one holding the family together. And yet here he was, completely forgotten in their plans for the future. The betrayal stung deeply, and it was made worse by the fact that his parents never even considered him. It was like he had been a mere afterthought, someone they could rely on when they needed something, but never truly valued. His father noticed Jake's silence as he sat frozen with the will in his hands. Jake, what's taking so long? He asked, walking back into the room. Without saying a word, Jake held up the document. He stared at his father, his voice eerily calm. So this is how it is. Huh. Everything to Eric after everything I've done for you. His father's face went pale. For a brief moment, Jake saw guilt flicker in his eyes, but then it was quickly replaced by defensiveness. Jake, it's not what you think, his father said weakly. No, Jake replied, his voice starting to shake with a mix of disbelief and rage. It looks pretty damn clear to me. I've been paying your bills, fixing the house, and helping with everything. Meanwhile, Eric does nothing. And you still decide that he gets thing? His father avoided his gaze. It's complicated, he muttered, as if that explained everything. Jake's anger boiled over. Complicated? You're not even going to try to explain. Before his father could respond, Jake called for his mother. When she walked in and saw the will in his hands, her reaction was no better. She looked guilty for a split second, but when she spoke, her words only added fuel to fire. Jake, honey, you don't need the inheritance, she said, her voice calm, as if trying to justify everything. You have a good job. You're independent. Eric, well, he struggles. We just want to make sure he's taken care of. That was the breaking point. Jake's hands trembled with rage. How could they say that, after all he had done? They were trying to frame it as if they were doing him a favor. They had spent years enabling Eric's laziness, and now they were going to reward it for it. And Jake, he was the one who had been holding everything together. And they were just going to toss him aside? Got it, Jake said, his voice icy cold. Glad to know where we stand. With that, he walked out of their house for the last time, slamming the door behind him. He had done enough for them. They had made their decision, and now it was time for him to make his own. The first few days were quiet. Jake didn't call, didn't check in. For the first time in years, he wasn't there to pay the bills or take care of his parents' needs. He ignored their calls and texts, something they weren't used to. They assumed he was just upset, that he would come crawling back as he always had. But this time, Jake wasn't coming back. 2 weeks passed without a word from Jake. His parents were starting to feel the consequences of their decision. They couldn't just keep going as if everything was fine. They needed money, and fast. It wasn't long before Jake's phone buzzed with a text from his dad. The property taxes are due. That was it. No apology, no explanation, just a cold, transactional message as if Jake were still the family ATM. Jake stared at the text, barely able to keep his composure. He didn't even have to think about it. I'm sure Eric will handle it. He texted back. After all, the house was his now. Within minutes, his mother called. Jake let it ring, and then another text through. Jake, please don't be like this. We need to talk. Jake waited an hour before ringing. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now you can live with it. That should have been the end of it. But then Eric decided to get involved. Jake's phone buzzed with a message from his brother. Dude, why are you being such a drama queen? It's not a big deal. Just help them out like you always do. Jake nearly laughed out loud. Eric, who had never lifted a finger in his life, was calling him dramatic. He couldn't believe it. No, Jake texted back. I think you've got it covered, since you're the favorite and all. Eric's response was as predictable as it was infuriating. Oh my god. Are you seriously mad about the will? Grow up. Man, it's just money. Jake's blood boiled. Right. Just money. Well, then you won't mind using some of that money to pay for the mortgage, right? The silence was deafening. A few minutes later, Jake's mom texted him again, this time shifting into full guilt trip mode. Jake, we're family. Family takes care of each other. We did so much for you growing up, and now you're just abandoning us. Abandoning them. Jake had spent years making sure they never had to struggle, and now, when the consequences of their own actions were staring them in the face, he was the bad guy. He didn't buy it for a second. You made it clear I wasn't part of the family when you left me out of the will. Jake texted back. Now Eric can take care of you. His mother's next message was a desperate plea. We're going to lose the house if you don't help us. Jake felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. Maybe you should have thought about that before deciding I didn't matter. It was at that moment, when he saw their desperation and manipulation for what it was, that Jake knew there was no tack back. The ties had been cut. He was done being their financial safety net. After the confrontation, the silence between Jake and his parents stretched on, growing thicker each day. The reality of their situation started to hit them harder. Without Jake's financial support, things were beginning to crumble for his parents. Jake knew it, and they knew it too. But instead of acknowledging their mistake, they doubled down. They still expected Jake to swoop in and rescue them, just like he always had. One afternoon, while Jake was at work, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from his dad. "We need to talk." That was all. No context, no apology for their actions, no acknowledgement of the years Jake had spent sacrificing his own happiness to help them. Just a cold, transactional demand. "We need to talk." Jake paused for a moment, staring at the message. His dad was never one to ask for emotional support, only financial. The realization hit Jake like a ton of bricks. This was just another attempt to manipulate him back into his old role, the family ATM. He had a choice to make. Should he answer the message, maybe listen to their pleas, or continue to stand his ground and finally let them face the consequences of their own actions? Jake decided to respond, but he was done being manipulated. He typed, "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Live with it." It didn't take long for the guilt trip to escalate. His mother texted him next, pleading with him, "Jake, please, you're not just abandoning us, you're abandoning family. You've always been there for us. We need you now. Don't be like this." Jake's anger flared again, but now he was better prepared. For years, his parents had used guilt to get him to do what they wanted. He wasn't going to fall for it again. He knew his worth now, and it wasn't tied to how much money he could provide them. They didn't appreciate his efforts, so why should he keep giving? He shot back a message. His words sharp, "I've been there for you my whole life, but it's clear that you never really needed me. Only my money. Don't call this family, and this is manipulation. I'm done being your doormat." Silence followed, but it wasn't the kind of silence that came with peace. It was heavy, suffocating. His parents were desperate now. They couldn't believe that their reliable son had finally turned his back on them. But this wasn't just about money, this was about respect, and they had shown him none. That night, when Jake thought it was over, his phone buzzed again. It was Eric. Of course, his entitled little brother, who had always taken everything for granted, was the last person Jake expected to reach out, but here he was, with a text that seemed more like a demand than a request. "Dude, just send them the money already. Why are you making this such a deal?" Eric's tone was dismissive, as if this was just some petty argument over a few $100s. Jake could feel his blood boil. Eric, the one who had never worked a day in life, was telling him to just help them out. The hypocrisy was overwhelming. Jake typed back without hesitation, "You mean your inheritance? Why don't you pay for it? You're the one who gets everything?" Eric didn't respond immediately, and Jake wondered if maybe his brother was starting to understand just a little bit of what was going on. But no, Eric's next message was classic Eric. "You're being ridiculous. It's just money. Help them out. They're your parents." Jake laughed bitterly. "Yeah, now it's just money. Huh? Now that it's your money, it doesn't matter?" The exchange left Jake feeling empty. Eric didn't get it. He never would. But Jake wasn't about to fall back into the same trap. This time, he was done. The next morning, Jake woke up to something he hadn't expected. A bank transfer request from his mother. The amount, $3,500. No explanation. No words of remorse, just a cold, impersonal request for the exact amount needed to cover their overdue mortgage. It was as if they still saw him as their personal bank. The audacity was mind-boggling. Jake stared at the request, a laugh escaping his lips. He declined the request without hesitation, feeling a sense of finality in his decision. But it didn't end there. Within minutes, his mother was calling him again. He ignored it, but another text followed. "Jake, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline it?" He couldn't believe what he was reading. They were demanding money from him as if nothing had changed. Jake took a deep breath and typed his response. "Because it's not my responsibility. Try Eric. He's the one who gets everything now." A few minutes passed before his mother texted again. "Jake, if you don't help us, we're going to lose the house." Jake's response was blunt and unwavering. "Maybe you should have thought about that before deciding I didn't matter." The following hours were silent, but the storm was far from over. The day passed without further contact, but Jake could feel the tension in the air. His family's manipulation was starting to show its true colors, and they were desperate to make him feel guilty. They still didn't understand that they had crossed a line with him, that they had treated him as a resource, not a son. It wasn't until the next evening that the situation escalated further. Jake was in his apartment, sitting on the couch, when he got a call from the front desk. "Hey Jake, your parents are downstairs. They say it's an emergency and they won't leave unless you talk to them." Jake felt his blood boil. They were here. They had actually shown up unannounced, thinking they could just demand money from him in person. Jake didn't hesitate. "Do not let them in," he told the front desk. "Tell them to leave." But his parents were persistent. His phone buzzed with a new message from his mother. "We're downstairs. Open the door. Jake." It was a command, not a request. Jake could feel the frustration building up inside him. How had it come to this? They were treating him like he owed them something, like they were entitled to his support no matter what. He walked downstairs to confront them, his mind made up. When he reached the door, he could see them standing there. His mom, dad, and Eric. They were all there, standing in the hallway like they were staging an intervention, each with their own version of disappointment and entitlement plastered across their faces. His mother spoke first, putting on her best dramatic act. "Jake, please, we need to talk," she said, her voice laced with faux sympathy. Jake crossed his arms and stood firm. "No, you need to leave. Now," his father scoffed, stepping forward with that same sense of superiority he always had. "Are you really going to let us lose the house over a petty grudge?" he asked, trying to loom over Jake. Jake laughed darkly. "Petty grudge? Oh, you mean the one where you decided I was good enough to pay your bills, but not good enough to be in your will?" His mother gasped, clutching her chest as if Jake had slapped her. "That's not fair," she exclaimed. Jake's voice was cold and ding. "Fair? You think what you did is fair? You've been enabling Eric's laziness for years, and now you expect me to fix it all." Eric, who had been standing silently, suddenly spoke up. "Look, man, I didn't ask for any of this," he muttered, trying to avoid eye contact. Jake took a step closer, glaring at his brother. "You didn't ask? You've had years to get your life together, to actually contribute, but you've been waiting for someone to take care of you, someone like me." Eric flushed red with anger, but didn't say anything further. Jake turned to his parents. "You two enabled this, and now you're trying to manipulate me into fixing the mess you created. It's not going to happen. I'm done." There was a long, painful silence. His parents stood there, looking stunned. Jake had never stood up to them like this before, and they were clearly taken aback. But Jake wasn't finished. He was finally free from their toxic grip. "You've made your choice," Jake said quietly. "Now you can live with it." With that, he turned and closed the door, leaving his family behind. But he knew this wasn't over yet. It was just the beginning of the fallout. The days following the confrontation were a whirlwind of emotions for Jake. He felt a strange sense of relief, like the weight of years of resentment, guilt, and unappreciation had finally been lifted off his shoulders. For the first time in a long time, he was free. But as his family scrambled to regain control, they weren't about to let go that easily. Less than 24 hours after Jake closed the door on them, the backlash began. Jake had blocked his parents and Eric from contacting him directly, but it didn't stop them from airing their grievances in public. He was scrolling through his social media feed when he first saw it. His mother's post. It was a passive-aggressive piece disguised as a message of family love. But it was clear what she was doing. "I never raised my son to be so selfish." The post read, "True family helps each other, no matter what." Underneath it, a few of her friends commented, expressing their disappointment, calling him out for being out of touch with what really matters. Jake's stomach churned as he read the comments. The narrative his parents were spinning had begun. They were turning the entire situation around, making him out to be the villain in a story where he had been nothing but generous, responsible, and dutiful. The manipulation was playing out right in front of him, and it infuriated him. As if on cue, Jake's father joined in. His post was similar in tone. "So-called family should never turn their back when you need them most." He wrote, "We gave everything to our children, and this is how we're repaid. My son, who should be helping us in our golden years, has chosen to abandon us." At the end, he added a passive-aggressive "I hope you're happy." Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He knew this was coming, but the audacity of them, spinning this whole situation as if he was the one who had wronged them, was more than he could bear. He had spent years paying for their lifestyle, supporting them when they needed it. And this was how they repaid him, by making him the villain. Then came Eric's post. The youngest son, the golden child, the one who had never contributed to him, was now the one to lecture Jake. "Some people think family is just about money." Eric wrote, his words dripping with entitlement. "They don't understand that family is about love and sacrifice. I would do anything for my parents. Some people just don't get it. They're too wrapped up in themselves to realize that true love is about helping those who raised you." He even threw in a veiled jab at Jake. "I wish some people could learn what it really means to be family." Jake stared at the screen, his mind racing. How had it come to this? How had they turned the entire situation around and made him the bad guy? All he had done was stand up for himself, and now they were trying to manipulate the public into thinking he was the one who had betrayed them. Jake took a deep breath. He wasn't going to let them control the narrative. He was done being manipulated, done being the scapegoat. If they were going to drag his name through the mud, he was going to set the record straight. He wasn't going to let them make him out to be the selfish one. He had always been the one to sacrifice, and now he was going to speak his truth. Jake opened his phone, went to his social media account, and started typing. It wasn't about revenge, it was about clarity. He didn't want to be involved in their petty back and forth, but he needed to make sure people knew the real story. He wasn't going to stay silent while his family twisted the truth. Here's what he wrote. "I know I've been quiet for the past couple of days, but I can't stay silent any longer. My family has been sharing a lot of things online about me that are simply not true. They've portrayed me as the villain, the selfish one who refuses to help my parents in their time of need. I'm here to set the record straight. I've always helped my family. From the moment I could get a job, I've been the one paying bills, buying groceries, and supporting them in every way I could. But there comes a point where you can't keep giving without being respected. Over the years, I watched my parents favor Eric, giving him everything: the house, the money, the attention, while I was expected to just keep giving, with no consideration for my own needs. I know some of you might be reading this and thinking, well, that's just how family works. But here's the truth: family should be a two-way street. When I found out that my parents had left everything to Eric in their will, I realized how one-sided this whole relationship had been. They never even considered me, not even for a moment. They made it clear that I was just the one they could rely on when things were tough, but never the one they actually wanted around unless it was convenient. For years, I've been the one funding their lifestyle. I've paid for vacations, chipped in for bills, and even helped out with things like the house taxes. But for what? To be treated like a backup plan? To be expected to fix everything for them when they screwed up? I'm done. I'm not just some wallet and they can pull money from whenever they need it. I'm a human being, and I deserve respect. As for Eric, it's time for him to grow up. He's 28 years old and has never worked a day in his life. He's never taken responsibility for anything. My parents have enabled him for long, and now it's no surprise that they favor him. But here's the thing: he's had plenty of time to get his life together. It's time for him to stand on his own 2 feet. To everyone who's been following this drama and supporting my parents, you need to understand that there are always two sides to every story. Yes, family is important, but it's also about mutual respect. I've given enough for a lifetime, and I'm not apologizing for taking a step back. This isn't me turning my back on family. This is me finally choosing myself. And to my parents, I wish you the best, but I'm done being your doormat. I'm done. This is my final goodbye. Jake hit post and leaned back, a strange sense of peace washing over him. For the first time, he had spoken his truth, and it felt freeing. He had been the one to take care of everyone for so long, but now he was taking care of himself. No more guilt, no more manipulation, just him, standing tall and proud for the first time in years. The reactions came flooding in, some supportive, others questioning his actions. But Jake didn't care. The people who mattered, the ones who understood, had reached out to him in private messages, expressing their condolences and admiration. For once, Jake didn't feel alone, but then the backlash hit. Eric messaged him, calling him a traitor. "You really had to air all our business out like this," he wrote, his tone dripping with disdain. "You've got no respect for family." Jake didn't hesitate. He typed back, "You know exactly why I did this. You've never had to work for anything. You've always been handed everything. This is your mess to deal with, not mine." Then his dad called, practically yelling into the phone, "You've ruined everything. Jake, you'll regret this. You'll regret cutting us off. You'll regret turning your back on your own family." Jake laughed bitterly. "No, Dad, I don't think I will. I'm finally free." He blocked their numbers. He was done. Jake was free from the toxic grip his family had on him, free to live his life on his own terms, without guilt, without manipulation. And for the first time, Jake felt like he had the power to move forward and build a future that was entirely his. It was time to live for himself.